Are you a believer? And if so, what do you believe in? Today we want to look at different belief systems. We are looking at the classification of belief systems. Zimbabwe is famed to be a Christian country. That means the better part of 50% of Zimbabweans, both adults and children, profess to be Christians. But there are many belief systems, and we also have the classification of belief systems. So what this video seeks to achieve is just to steer your interest to investigate what you really believe, so that peradventure you give yourself wholly to your particular belief system. Let us get to it. Takatarisa zvitendero, we actually have main two camps. Camps at now, we have Theism and Atheism. Kune vakastada chirungu vanoziva kuti tikatanga a word with a zvinoreva kuti we are alluding to an opposite of the word which is going to follow. So atheism should be an opposite of theism. Looking at that, what is theism? Theism, it is belief in God. So if you are a theist, that means you believe in a supreme being, you believe in God. Atheism then should mean the absence of believing in God. So we can summarize as not believing in God. But let us double down on theism. Theism is further subdivided into two classes. The first class is monotheism. Then the second class is polytheism. Saka again, appealing to those who understand English, the prefix mono means one, single. Monotheism, these are people who believe in one God. Only believing in one supreme being. But polytheists, that is those who ascribe to polytheism, they do believe in many gods. So this is now plurality. When we look at monotheism, believing in one God, we are also going to identify a certain, I could call it a sect or a part of the monotheistic belief. We have what are called Abrahamic religions. So Abrahamic religions, as alluded, of course, these are religions which claim allegiance to Abraham. These three religions, when we trace back their origins, they all claim to have come in one way or another from Abraham. So the first of these religions is, of course, Judaism. Then we have Christianity. Then we have Islamic religion. So these are the three Abrahamic religions. What about in polytheism? A belief in the plurality of supreme beings. That is where we have examples like Buddhism. And you should also acknowledge that Buddhism, by record, is the oldest existing religion. Now, to be fair to our analysis, we should actually have classified belief systems into three. Kureva kuti we have theism, we have atheism. I think we should add another class, spiritualism. And an example which comes to mind, spiritualism is the African traditional religion, and also a new variant of a religion which is called New Age religion, or in simpler terms, New Ageism. Now, you might be confused because in the African traditional religion, we have Musikavanu, that's the supreme deity. Why do we classify it under spiritualism? I did so because it takes from monotheism and also have aspects of polytheism. So in the African traditional religion, we have Musikavanu as the supreme deity. But the role of ancestors actually play demigods. They are actually some mini gods if we are to look at the practical implications of ancestral belief in the African traditional religion. So that is my justification of putting it under spiritualism. Of course, you can argue against that. Before we go any further, I want to give a disclaimer. This video is not authoritative. I'm not an expert in what I'm discussing. I'm just an autodidact and someone who is interested in learning stuff. And when I learn something, I tell you what I have learned. So if you want something authoritative, we have a lot of resources which you can use as your research base. A lot of books which you can read to understand this topic a little better. So when we look at the theistic part, we have shown that we have monotheism and polytheism. We have also shown that we have Abrahamic religions as the main players. Abrahamic religions are important in that close to half, maybe to be more accurate, we can claim a third of the human population belong to either Christianity or the Islamic religion. Catholics alone are over 1 billion and counting. And Muslims are also over 1 billion and counting. Add the Protestants, other churches. We have churches like Jesus Christ, the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints. They are counting millions. The Seventh-day Adventist Church counts millions. The Jehovah's Witness counts millions. Then all the local churches which count hundreds of thousands. That is looking at this advent of what is called the prophetic movement. So the Abrahamic religions are actually claiming close to half the human population. That is to stress the importance these religions play in everyday life. Let us now shift gear a little and talk about atheism. Not believing in God, not holding a belief in God. Some might argue, some might even be offended. Why am I including atheism when we are discussing belief systems? Because atheists claim that ours is not a belief system. It is literally an absence of a belief system. I think atheism, as we look at it now, the variant of atheism which is existing, which has thought leaders like Richard Dawkins, sounds to me more like a religion, because it is not so much scientific, and I'm going to prove. What I actually think should not be included in a belief system, because it is an absence of it, is agnosticism. And we are going to talk about it in a moment. Let us double down on atheism. So if atheists do not believe in God, what then do they believe in? There are many variants of atheists. We are going to see the need of belief. It's so penetrating to the effect no one can claim not to have a belief system. It's actually almost impossible. Every rational person should have a belief system. So atheists who claim not to hold a belief in God actually replace that belief in God with something else. So I'm going to just summarize some variants or groups or classes of atheism. We have what is called scientism. Scientism is a belief in science, a belief in evidence. Show me the evidence of what you are talking about. But we are going to challenge this claim that scientists or those who believe in science, because not all scientists ascribe to scientism. We are going to challenge this just in a moment. So we have scientism. We then have those who call themselves humanists, or it's humanism. We also have what is called naturalism. These are beliefs which, when summarized, are simply believing in nature, believing in the laws of nature, believing in evidence, ascribing your belief to what can be observed. So we have scientism, humanism, and naturalism. You should also know that there is a form of fluidity, how it takes from both monotheism and polytheism. We also see a fluidity when it comes to atheists, how they believe or ascribe to scientism, humanism, and naturalism. Now let us discuss a purgatory, a middle ground between theism and atheism. So we have theism, believing in God. We have atheism, not believing in God. Then on the middle here we have what is called agnosticism, which inclines more towards atheism because they do not believe in God, but their reason for not believing is usually a lack of evidence. So agnosticism or agnosticists, they are more like indifferent. There are people who would say, this question does not matter. There are people who would say, I believe in God, I do not believe in God. That's why I used the word purgatory. It's a middle ground, which of course has different biases, and by and large, it is skewed or biased towards the side of atheism, but it's just believing and not believing. That's what agnosticism is. And of course, agnosticists have to replace or find something to believe. That's why they then align themselves with humanism and naturalism, also with scientism. So this is it. We have agnosticists who do not believe in God but are indifferent on this issue. They are not fanatically theistic, neither are they fanatically atheistic. Now, having discussed this, we now want to answer the question, what is the need of belief? Why is belief so important? So you could, even those who claim not to believe in God have to find something to replace that disbelief. Now I'm going to borrow an answer from biology. In biology, there is a study called taxonomy. So taxonomy, I don't know a lot about this. It's simply the classification of life, the classification of animals and plants, flora and fauna. Human beings are classified as animals. So they belong to a kingdom which is called Animalia. We are animals. Anatomically, we are animals. We are bimodal animals, meaning tinofamba nemakumbo 2 standing upright. That is our classification. But when we look at sociology and psychology and the study of the mind, it is then added that we are actually what you would call social animals. We belong to tribes. Saka, there is an incessant need to belong. That is why cults thrive. That is why we have hate groups. People need to belong and to identify with some idea, no matter how good or bad it is. An example to justify this conclusion of mine, mukatarisa kumajeri. Vanhu vanoenda kujeri because they've committed some crime. But vari mujeri kudaro, if they commit another crime, what is the punishment they are given? Usually punishment yavanopiwa is isolation. They are isolated. What does this mean? Unoiswa muroom musina light. It's dark. And they also make it a point to disturb or confuse your concept of time. Kureva kuti you do not have a watch, you do not have a phone or anything. It's usually dark. You do not know what time it is. So you might use chikafu chamunopiwa to determine what time it is. For example, pamunopiwa porridge, you would then assume kuti maama kuseni. Pamunopiwa mabanzi or something, maybe it's around 10. They actually change that schedule. Kureva kuti utanga kupiwa chikafu zvakangozangana so that you do not know what the concept of time is, and there are studies which show kuti actually your sleeping pattern will be disturbed. Maybe sometimes you sleep for only 5 hours, maybe sometimes you sleep for over 5 hours. So because of that now, you actually go mental. There are also studies which prove that if you are isolated, you go mental. Look at all the serial killers and all these sadistic people. They've one thing in common. They are loners. They do not interact with the outside world. So they have enough time with their dirty, vile thoughts, and they can put them into practice. I said this to support my claim that beliefs, religion, is very necessary because we are social animals and we also want to belong. If you want to study more on this topic, there is a book by Gustave Le Bon. This book is called The Crowd. He explained in this book the psychology of the crowd, why people can be part of a cult or part of a hate movement. It is this need to belong. So because of this need to belong, we have to believe in something. And when you believe in something and you find the next person who believes in the same thing, you become a community. You are fulfilled as a social animal. But when we look at the history of humanity, when we look at our own history from either lens, be it from a creationist's point of view, that is from the creation of Adam up to today, or from a Darwinist's point of view, that is from the evolution of men up to today, the reason for religion was to answer humanity's deepest questions. In my summary of these deepest questions, I have reduced them to only 2. I think the first question is, where do we come from? This is the first major question. Then secondly, where are we going? Or simply, the afterlife. And of course, there is a third question which is in between. What is my purpose in life? So you have a question of where you come from. Then as you are living life, you are asking what your purpose is. And when you meet your end through death, you will be asking, where am I going after this? These are the three main questions which humanity always seeks to answer. So we want to study beliefs, looking at different schools of thought in the answering or attempt of answering these questions. When we look at the question, where do I come from? We have mainly two schools of thought. The first school of thought is creationism. So the creationist believes in a God or an intelligence which created this world, this universe. That is a creationist for you. So if you ask anyone from mainstream organized religion, where do we come from? The answer would be dependent on who you ask. But if it is asking an Abrahamic religion member, their answer is going to be from God, from Adam. But we have another countering school of thought which can be called Darwinian evolution. So of course, Darwinian is coming from Charles Darwin, who is the father of evolution. He proposed a theory that all life came from a single life form through a process which is referred to as abiogenesis. So abiogenesis is, I would say, a belief, because I don't think we have definitive proof to prove this. A belief that life existed or propagated from nothing. Just a moment you have nothing, the next moment you have life. Then from a single cellular life form sprouted complex life, talking about polycellular life forms like human beings, animals, and plants. Then we can also talk about the Big Bang. So the Big Bang theory is also a theory brought forward to try to explain the origin of the universe. But when we look at creationists, we also have different camps. We have what are called young earth creationists. Then we have those who are called old earth creationists. So young earth creationists believe that humanity and the earth is roughly 6,000 years old. Then they say the universe is roughly 10,000 years old. Old earth creationists, they take the scientific view that the earth is roughly 4 billion years old and the universe being around 14 billion years old. Then 6,000 and 10,000. You can see we have a large difference there. So the issue is the place of science in religion. We have the young earth creationists who are fundamentalists and literalists. They take Genesis chapter 1 as a record of the history of life. They take the different days in Genesis chapter 1 as literal 24-hour periods. Whereas old earth creationists, they take the days in Genesis chapter 1 as long periods, spanning millions, if not billions of years. And I also want to stress that both these camps, they believe in what is called biblical inerrancy. They believe that the Bible is a scientific book, an accurate depiction of God's will and God's word. It has no error and it is not metaphoric. Because we also have a variant of Christians who hold the view that the Bible is metaphor, it's poetic. It's not meant to be taken as a scientific record. So this is a rough summary of belief systems. Of course, we have other centralist belief systems like Theism. Theism is a belief in God, but there is belief that God is not involved in the everyday runnings of life. God does not micromanage life. So God just created life and left it to manage itself through the laws of nature and through human interaction. So that's Theism. It's a centralist belief system which exists between Theism and Atheism. Now Nawiripo, especially in Christianity and also in mainstream religion, is to find a place. How does science relate with religion? That is the same reason why we have a class or a group of Christians who believe in what is called theistic evolution. So theistic evolution is the belief that God is the instigator, designer of evolution. He guided evolution. If we take the evolution of humans, for example, Darwinian evolution claims that humans and chimpanzees and bonobos have a common ancestor, and also baboons and monkeys, they are distant relatives of humans. So those who believe in theistic evolution do believe that God is the one who instigated this process. So this is a rough summary of belief systems. I hope you learned something new, and I also hope you are questioning yourself so that you know where you belong.